Hi, this is Anthony from MakeWeirdMusic.com, and I'm here with Markus Reuter, all the way from Berlin. Markus, thank you for joining us.
Hello. Hi.
The site is about discovering new artists and expanding your creative horizons, and you are a very creative musician. Can you tell us about yourself and how you got to where you are today?
Well, that's a very good question. It's really that somehow I got really motivated in my very early teens to become like a musician, but the word musician really isn't kind of big enough to really describe what it's about, what I'm doing. It's more like I'm trying to find something that I want to hear. It's like I have this vision inside me, and that I somehow feel driven to kind of find what that vision could be in the real world, you know. So it's been a very, very long process. So it started, I think, when I was around 9 or 10 years old, and I'm still always, like, even now at almost 44 years, I feel like I've only just started, you know, and just this feeling of always you know, of not being comfortable with where I am as an artist is actually part of what's really driving me. And so the worlds that I'm kind of looking for with my music are like you could say like undiscovered worlds. And so you know, speaking of weird music, I believe that there is a way. There's still a lot of uncharted territory in music, even though some people believe that everything has been said or done. I think that's just plain stupid, to tell you the truth. And you know, especially like with the Western system, the 12 notes of the chromatic scale that we use, I think there's still so much more to be said, because somehow like almost 100 years, like the knowledge was at a high point really, and then kind of disintegrated a little bit, and we had the whole let's say rock and roll pop music thing happen, and I think we're at a time now where things kind of start to fuse again. So there's all the knowledge of rock and the classical combined with what was used to be called punk and the DIY scene and stuff like that, experimental music. And I think we're in a postmodern time where experimental music does not, or experiments really do not lead to new results anymore. So what I'm trying to do is kind of fuse, let's say, or what I'm trying to do is like to build a bridge between old knowledge and new technologies, and new knowledge, you could say. So it's but it's really, you know, I could go on the, you know, talking about it on an abstract level, or we can really speak about something specific, and I can explain what I mean.
Well, you said you get uncomfortable and you try to dislodge yourself from that comfort. What are some of the things that help you to recognize that you are comfortable, and what are some of the things you do to dislodge yourself from that comfort?
I mean, it's really interesting, because what does make me feel comfortable is if I don't understand. If I get the feeling that there's something that I don't understand, that makes me happy. That makes me feel comfortable, because for me the world is boring. The world is extremely boring, and you know, I'm kind of basically looking for like let's just stick to the music, but you know, I'm looking for states that make me feel uncomfortable, and that means that's the music that I haven't heard. That's like, for example, with my main band, which is Zentralzone. It's a German project. We have this rule that whenever we hear something that we don't like, that's what we're going to keep. If we're recording, we're not keeping the things we like. We throw those out, but we keep those that we don't like, and we put them out and we treat them like the most beautiful children. And that's one way of raising something new, you know, things that aren't beautiful, things that you don't recognize right away, things that you actually nurture, and then at kind of a later point, and in hindsight, it becomes beautiful. And I think it's the same like with a lot of music, and especially with like looking at the biographies of a lot of artists that are being discovered when they're long dead. You know, so it's really about finding something that hasn't been said, and for me that really includes that when I'm writing music or creating music, I do want to find a music in a language that no one has heard before.
You've talked about vision. It sounds you sound more like an artist using music to manifest that vision than somebody who explicitly chooses music out of a love or adoration for the craft in a way. Can you talk about how you came to find music to create that reality of your vision?
I guess that's like the word vision has nothing to do with being visual, you know. It's not something that's represented in the sense of vision, and it's not even represented in the sense of hearing for me. It's really about states of like emotions, feelings, and even that doesn't really cover it. It's almost like a sixth sense kind of thing, that there's something that I do want to capture, and so really, how did I discover that that music is like or sound is the medium? I think the answer is very simple. Sound and vibration is the ultimate medium. It's what the world is made of. Like my understanding just of the world, my worldview is that everything is a vibration. Yeah, and you can basically kind of track everything down to a vibration. You can break it down again, but it's all vibration. And that's why musicians or people who manipulate sound are basically, and let me just use this word, are basically gods. You know, just in the sense of the word that you're creating. You're creating the materials that are being used in order to build the world. So that's why music really is, for me, like the most fundamental art there is. You know, even though like other arts, they kind of plug into the same thing, but music is just the most basic, the most simple, the most most important, I would say.
So you talked about how everything is a vibration, and that music is a very basic, fundamental thing in the world. Your ambient music, and a lot of your music, doesn't seem to follow a traditional song structure in the rock or Western sense of intro, verse, chorus, bridge, that kind of thing. Do you feel that that's a layer that's been added that's unnecessary, or that you have worked through that and come to understand music differently in a way above or in parallel to that?
Yeah, I mean, the idea that musical pieces should be structured into sections, or that you have repeating sections and stuff, that's really what I call songwriter music. Well, the approach is to tell a story that's usually also told with words. So in a way, the music, it becomes kind of like a secondary thing. And I don't necessarily mean in quality, but just in terms of the message, okay? So yes, I have worked with those structures in like several projects, things I've produced onto my own projects. And I've come to realize that there's the tendency to edit yourself or to edit the music when you're approaching it like a songwriter, because you're asking yourself, okay, is maybe, you know, because you're telling a story, and if you're telling a story, it means you already know what the story is. So, but that's not my approach to music, so I can't really, and that's why my music is so different in its form. I don't know which story you are telling yourself when you're listening to the music I'm making. So I can't be like, or I try not to intervene, you know, and kind of cut things down to tell my story, but I want you to be able to, you know, hear your story. And that's really where song structures, I think, they might work for some people, because you're still making up your own story. You always will, yeah. But for me, it was just important to kind of let the music speak for itself. And for me, there's no such thing as too many repetitions, or you know, it's really that for me the music itself kind of. Or let's say, because I'm basically composing conceptually, so the concept, kind of the musical concept, tells me what the structure should be, but it's not anything like that I'm superimposing as a human being in terms of, oh, this means that and this means that, and you know, so on. So that's really the reason why. And I mean, it's interesting, like, for example, there was one of my first professional groups, Europa String Choir, which was like a chamber group. And there were really interesting things happening when we were writing. We were actually using the songwriter's approach, but it was fun because we realized, okay, maybe sometimes you don't even want to repeat something twice. You just want to repeat it 1.5 times. Or 2.5 times. So like, and then I mean, it all kind of came together in that project, in the sense that, like, when we were recording those pieces that had these more interesting, complex forms, we figured out, okay, let's play it at 105 BPM, and you know, listen back and see what it sounds like. Oh no, it's a little slow. And we tried 106, and then we tried 105.5. And it turned out that 105.5 was the tempo. So what I mean is, like, that really what is happening, like, or has been happening for me, is that I'm kind of raising the resolution of what I'm doing, how I'm experiencing music. And so like the DAWs that we have, they're all set to 120 BPM when we open them up, and a lot of music is at 120 BPM, and that's like sad. Yeah, it's like a clear sign that people are not listening. Yeah. So I mean, just saying, this wasn't meant as a criticism, just as an example that, like, technology kind of gives us this, and I mean, technology and education, I have to say, gives us this grid that we believe things should be in. And what I've been doing is kind of like raise the resolution of that grid for myself. I still believe that a grid is nice, and just like I said that we have the 12 notes that we can work with, and that there's still a lot to discover, we can still discover a lot within a grid, but we should kind of subdivide more, you know.
That's so interesting. You said that you want people to hear their own story in your stories, but you've also said that that some of your music, at least, is released as the songs that you didn't like, the things that that made you uncomfortable.
Yes.
Do you believe that any of that discomfort carries on to the listener, or is it just that was your experience and you believe they'll still find their own?
So the funny thing is that what I actually said was that it makes me feel comfortable. It's the discomfort that makes me feel comfortable, because the discomfort is the sign that I've discovered something. And I hope and I believe that that's what's carrying over to the listener too. Yes, I think so. There's like you know, there's something that you need to latch onto as a listener, and just say as a human being, we're going through this world as the most advanced pattern recognition machine there's ever going to be, probably. So we're walking through this world and we're kind of seeing something, we're hearing something, we're feeling something, and we latch onto that and we develop an interest in it. So for me, for example, that was actually the band King Crimson, which but it wasn't the music of that band King Crimson, it was the name. Like, my piano teacher mentioned King Crimson to me, and I knew there was something there. I knew there was something behind that name that I needed to follow up on. And only like 2 years later or so, I discovered the music, and it turned out, yes, I was right. So really, the pattern recognition, it really extends. Let's just say between the lines. Like we're really such amazing beings, and we're not aware of it, really. Like, the subconscious processes so much and kind of picks up on vibes, that's really what I'm very interested in also with my music, just to kind of feed the subconscious at the same time as the conscious, and then kind of I'll try to get the people to kind of get them into this state where somehow the gates open, both going inside and going outside, so where people get inspired themselves, where they get creative themselves. And in a way, and this might sound, still to me sounds funny, but I think if there was anything, if you would ask me, Markus, what are you doing here? I would say I'm actually a healer. I don't want to be a healer. It's not that I've chosen that, and just the music for myself, that's my medium. That's my world. That's where I feel good. That's where I can develop. That's also a world that I can withdraw into. But for other people, I think it does the same. And like, coming back to your question, yes, it does make people feel uncomfortable. And that's a good thing. It's a good thing. I don't need to do things that make people comfortable. This is just not the way I am. It's not my responsibility to make you feel comfortable. That's your own. You should feel comfortable. It's not my responsibility. But I can create something that might inspire you.
So it sounds like, I would imagine all of this developed over time. This perspective developed as you grew up from an adolescent to an adult, and then also as somebody who was taking maybe some piano lessons and got formalized education elsewhere on other instruments. Is a lot of this stuff a result of dissatisfaction with standard songwriting and music techniques, or is this just kind of, were you born with this intuition? Were you born with these feelings? Can you tell us about the development of this perspective?
Yeah, Anthony, that's a very, very deep question. I really, and it's extremely personal. And I can tell you, I think it's my childhood. And like the greatest musicians, the greatest artists, they had a shit childhood. And my childhood, from my perspective, like what I know now, wasn't so bad. It wasn't so bad, but maybe there was something. Like, for example, as a 3-year-old, I was in hospital for 3 weeks, alone. I don't know, maybe that's why I became a musician. That's why I have the drive to create. Maybe they tied me down at night. I don't know. It's something like that. It's really, really simple. And I think if we, like all of us, if we look back, there's something that drives us, and it's usually something bad, And it's like, not a lot of people can talk about this, because like especially artists, and in the old model with the record companies, and so you obviously try to keep the distance, so you wouldn't really say these things. But like one of my greatest influences is Mike Oldfield, and he has always been like very straightforward about what happened in his childhood, and like, you know, that he started to write Tubular Bells probably when he was 6 years old or something, you know, and it's just really somehow, I mean, you know, somehow I think this drive, and this is something that Freud said, like that we have the drive to die. Yeah, so there's this drive to die, and somehow some of us become creators, and we all are creators. It's just a continuum. So there's nobody in this world who's not creating, but some of us, they just have this need to do that, and I'm just one of them.
So you talked about being a creator, and that possibly stemming from childhood wounds or illness or something bad. And then you've also said that you've found yourself to be a healer through music. Are those things tied together? Does music heal some of that wound or whatever it is that's motivating you?
And to be honest, I'm not sure if the music is the healer. I think we are still the healers for ourselves, and I guess that you can kind of, in a way, misuse music to have an excuse not to heal yourself. But still, that you know. I don't really believe that anymore, but like maybe 10-20 years ago I would have said that happy music that's why we have happy music in this world, to make you close up towards your own responsibilities, to heal yourself. But that's a little extreme, you know. It's not that way. It's not that way, but that's like food for thought, you know. But because we do always have consuming things can always distract you, and you can distract yourself by watching the greatest paintings, you know. So it's not necessarily the art itself that is healing, but it provides the materials that you need to heal yourself. So, I mean, like this whole idea of, like what I said earlier, that the people who manipulate sound are gods. I also think there is something like that there are demons, okay, but that would be like in the Greek mythology. I think there is obviously a lot of wisdom in the Greek mythology. And like the gods themselves, they fail, you know, and the demons, they're, you know, very bad demons. There are demons that are kind of not so bad, you know. It's like a spectrum of beings, where I think if we think about it, it makes a whole lot of sense, you know. There are some people that are creating the materials with which the world is being built, and there are others that are then on a different level creative, using those materials in order to build something. So it's like it's not really that there's good and bad, that's not, or yin and yang, but there's levels of materials that are being generated in this world, and music, I believe, is one of the really basic ones. And when I'm talking about music, I'm not necessarily talking about what we consider to be music making, but also listening. You know, the act of listening is also making music. Yeah, so you could be in the wild, without any musical instrument, and you'd be hearing the birds and the waterfall or whatever, and it would be music to your ears. Just the act of listening kind of turns it into music. So somehow that's kind of in a very simple words, it's kind of like one of the energizing factors in this world. Yeah.
Now, as I mentioned, the site is for helping people to discover new kinds of music and new artists.
Yeah.
You are the first ambient artist. Well, actually, Michael Manring does ambient as well. But I'd like to ask you specifically about ambient music, because you obviously have a lot of very deep opinions and thoughts on music and its capabilities. So what turned you on to ambient music, and can you describe how ambient music reaches you in a way that's similar or different to non-ambient music, more standard radio music?
Well, first of all, I would say that for me, what sounds like ambient music to other people, it's just one particular kind of contemporary music, in the sense that it's more concerned with the music than the marketing or the packaging. Okay, so it's more like classical music than pop music, in that sense. And the cool thing about ambient music is that even though what kind of when Brian Eno coined the term, his idea was for it to be like a passive thing, like a passive listening thing. But with modern, or let's just say postmodern ambient music, it's really it's music that people actively listen to. You can do anything with that. It's just up to you. It's not really printed into the music what you can do with it. Ambient music in that sense is really, speaking of that, the emotional content of music, what you would and we describe as ambient music, has the potential to be a pure, or let's say more of a pure expression of an emotion. And when I say expression, I don't mean that it's an emotion that you as the creator have, but that's the emotion that the listener can kind of compose around the sound. And that's why, it's interesting, because it basically was also technology that brought me into ambient music, because I started using delay loops pretty early on when they became available in the mid-90s, like the Oberheim Echoplex Digital Pro. That's the first device that I used to record my first album, actually. And it's kind of like a microcosm. It's you're kind of zooming into sounds. You're zooming into harmonic structures. You're allowed to take your time. And that's really what makes it such an amazing genre. Also for personal development. I think really I did it in order to practice making music, like the delay loops, to play into it. You're hearing back to what you just played right away, and then you can add something. And you kind of learn about the spacing of the notes, you learn about the spacing in time, the spacing in the spectrum, and all like that. And it was really fascinating and inspiring for me to have technology available that allowed me to compose in real time that way. So, and I still do that when I'm making ambient music. It's always like an expression. It's like real time composition. It's not improvisation, it's real-time composition, and I can apply similar concepts to the composition that I'm doing offline, yeah. But like the live composition has always been a very important factor, and really just ambient music lends itself to that.
What first attracted you to ambient music, and did it strike you as appealing at first?
Very much so. I think like the first music that I would describe as ambient music that I heard was was by Mike Oldfield from an album called The Killing Fields. It was a soundtrack album, and there were just these really short ambient pieces on there, like just maybe a minute or so of really weird chords, and those fascinated me like a lot. It was just like this. Just the mood to have like the sustained sound, and you could just kind of zoom in onto the relationships of the notes with each other, and it like was like a whole world was opening up just in the combination of those static pitches, and that's really what was fascinating for me. And around the same time, I also got into contemporary classical composers of the 20th century, like Messiaen and also David Bedford, for example, which really is amazing. And those guys were always doing ambient music, but what kind of set it apart and what kind of drew me in, I guess, was that they were always kind of already breaking the boundaries of what people consider to be consonant versus dissonant. And really that's where my interest always was, to kind of also to teach myself to hear things, you know, to kind of not even fall into these categories of saying this is dissonant or this is consonant. And I'm still kind of in the process of breaking that barrier for myself. It's very relevant for an instrumentalist. If you're playing, you know, like me, I'm performing, and I do not want to cringe when I play a wrong note. And I've been working on that for almost 20 years, and I've gotten very good at it. I can play any wrong note at any time. It might sound as bad to you as it can, but to me, it sounds great. And that's really like, that was really like one of the aims that I think that the looping technology, the ambient music, was one of the ways how I could accomplish that for myself, how I could practice that for myself.
That kind of raises another very amateur question that I wrote down. I enjoy ambient music, but I only have been exposed to what I would say are professionals, you know? You, Robert Fripp, Brian Eno, Michael Manring, Michael Hedges. Is there bad ambient music? And how would you know if it was bad, if there is such a thing?
Dude, there's no bad music. There's either music or it's not music, and you're the one who defines that. Just this idea of a guilty pleasure, which exists in the English language, yeah, the guilty pleasure, it doesn't make sense to me. Like, you know, whatever floats your boat, really.
That's cool.
Yeah.
You said in another interview that you found your voice at the age of 33. Can you, as somebody who's gone too far in the world of technique and instrumental noodling, can you tell me about how you found your voice and the path you kind of took? Because for me, I feel like I need to step away from some of that, and we both did guitar craft stuff. For me, it's almost taken me too far in the technical direction. But I want to hear about your side of things and how you found your voice and the path you took and the path you're on.
Okay, so just this concept of your personal voice, I wouldn't use those words. Because it's not my voice. it's not my voice. It really isn't, because I'd rather consider myself to be like an interface. Okay, so the voice is between whatever is there to inspire and the recipient, you know. And I'm part of the audience. You know, when I'm playing, I'm listening. And that's really actually maybe the most wise thing I can say to, or you could say to any musician, you know, listen to what you're playing or what you're doing. I don't ever question that, but probably it's something that people just don't do. Okay, so I think that's like, if you want to find your voice, just listen to what you're doing. I guess that's the answer. And there, you know, and it really connects to the question you had earlier, like with looping devices. That's what they do. You know, you play into them, and it plays back to you right away. So you're hearing what you did, and you have the opportunity to decide for yourself if you, let's say, like it or not like it, or even if you don't want to use those terms, how you would describe what's happening. So maybe you play 3 notes, and then you realize, oh, the second note, that was a D, and the D has a little bit of a buzz on it. And then you decide for yourself if the buzz is something that you want the next time you play the D, or, you know, or maybe you don't want the buzz. Or maybe the Ds didn't really satisfy you, so the next time you're playing an E flat. And really that's how we kind of find our voice, by playing things back to ourselves. And that could be like, you could sit down with your instrument, start a recorder, and just improvise, just play, just move your fingers, don't even improvise, just move your fingers, and then listen back to it, and then repeat. So that's how you can find your voice.
Did you overcome, I mean, you said you've avoided cringing, or you're learning to avoid cringing when you play a, quote, wrong note. Did you have to overcome fears to get to where you are, to create the music that you create? Even to become a musician?
Yeah, I mean, very, very much so, but in a way I got lucky that like my personality is like that. I'm very well, I don't know how to put it. Like, some people think that I'm arrogant, but it's not that I'm arrogant. I just have this vision. I kind of know what is right and what is wrong. Even if it's in the greater context, it's, you know, what I consider right is wrong. I don't care, but at least I have an opinion. I'm good at creating references and milestones for myself, and that's really what at least that's my path of developing, of improving. You know, like for example with the touch guitar, with the touch style instruments. When I started out in the early 90s, people were saying, oh, we don't know anything about it, blah, blah, blah. Nobody knows how to play this instrument, blah, 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 blah. And I said, okay, yeah, we don't know how to play this instrument, but we know what we need in order to play what we consider music. We need to be able to start a note, and we need to be able to stop a note. And we can look at the instrument and we can find out how to start a note and how to stop a note. That's what we can do. And that's what I always was very good at kind of identifying what we know or what I know, and then I could go from there. And that's really like one of the secrets, really, to not get distracted by what you don't know, but to start at a point where you feel confident that something's right. And even that, if that thing that's right to you is wrong in the bigger context, it still is something that pushes you forward, because you're not criticizing yourself, you're not kind of putting your hands into cuffs before you've even started playing a note. Yeah.
This kind of approach, I would imagine, requires a very supportive audience. and thankfully for the internet, there is an international community of people, who are open to this kind of music. Do you think that you could have done what you do and make a living
Mm-hmm.
20 years ago doing this approaching music in this sense where you are?
I started 20 years ago, so
Yes.
so the answer is yes. I think for me it doesn't really matter. I don't really assume there's an audience. I don't assume that people want to hear what I'm doing. I think that's just wrong. I can get excited about something that I create, and then maybe somebody else gets excited about it. But the group of people that is really getting excited about it is either extremely small, which is fine because it's could be one person. It could just be me, that one person. Fine. It's really not about quantity for me. It's the quality, and I believe that the whole, like all the talk about the music business, the new paradigm and stuff. Really, what it is for me is that quantity doesn't really count anymore. It's the quality of the connection with your artist, with your fans, of the artist and the fan, or your audience, or I would even call them friends. Yeah, like if, for example, I can put out a free download, and maybe there's one guy who really likes what I do, and he puts down 100 euros for a download of an album. Okay, so the 100 euros does not represent the value of a CD, of a physical product you would press. Okay, but it represents the trust in the artist, and that somebody really likes it. So it's not, there's nothing you can quantify there anymore. It's about quality. And this is where things kind of start happening. Like, for example, I would have to sell 100 downloads of a €1 song to get 100 euros. That's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. It's much more likely that there's one person that's going to give me 100 euros. And that for me is the new paradigm. And that's how it should be. And that's how it, in a way, always was. Just this little detour we've made with the music business. The music business is just one example of this Greek mythology thing with the demons and the gods. Yeah, where the demons are trying to keep the gods stupid and naive, and stuff like that. So, in a way, that's really like we're well. When I say we, obviously I'm talking about myself. Yeah. It's unfortunately I'm at a different. I really don't. I couldn't be bothered about selling copies of something. I don't care. And it's not what motivates also. I know it's different. I mean, I read an interview with Stephen Wilson a few weeks ago, which actually was not an interview but an advertorial. Anyway, people were discussing it online as if it was a real interview.
Yeah, I read the same thing.
Yeah, and there was one point at which Stephen said that he would rather have stuff up on Spotify so people can listen to it. And I think that clearly, and I'm this is not like a criticism of his person. I'm saying it like clearly shows what his motivation is. His motivation is that he wants people to hear what he's doing. It's fine. That's something that a lot of us need. That for me, that would kill the music for me. I don't want to do that. And it's really interesting, like the least compromise I make for a project, the more successful project. So it's totally counterintuitive, but it's true. And it's kind of interesting because I love collaborating with people. So, for example, here's an interesting story. My friend Ian Boddy, that I started working with in 1999, so a long time ago. Whenever we put out an album, we kind of we switch the names around. So it could be Ian Boddy, Markus Reuter, or the other way around. And you'd assume that if you have like two groups of fans intersecting, or being added to each other, you would get a bigger audience. But the opposite is true. Like when Ian releases a solo album, he sells more, and the other way around. It's really interesting how the psychology also plays into the image that people have over certain artists. Also the protectiveness and preciousness about a certain artist, and it's kind of interesting how these things go. That like at some point a name becomes the music in a way. It's not about the music anymore. You have to like it. You have to because people say so, because the media says so. And I don't have a problem with that, because it's cool and it helps. And I mean, I can tour with Tony Levin because the So album, Peter Gabriel, was so successful in the 80s, and without all the money they spent on it, I wouldn't be where I am. But still, it's really just something that you need to be aware of these days, that a lot of things that you read, or most of the things that you read, are just paid for. It's paid for content and paid for opinion, and it doesn't mean anything. It's really, and that's just the way it is. And we, some of us, maybe they have a sense for that, and they understand that you always have to look, read between the lines and stuff. But so anyway, there's no need for me to get into that world.
Right. You must be a great music producer. I know you produce a lot of artists. Why? I would say, as somebody who manages people as my full-time work, what pays me in the market, I see a man with a very strong vision, a way to articulate that, and a way to use that vision and motivate other people. I mean, even just hearing you myself here and now, I feel like, yeah, I need to get up and just just make music and quit worrying about the things that I worry about. I need to put those fears behind me. How do you bring that out in the artists you work with, especially if they see things pretty differently, or they have an agent that doesn't agree with your philosophies here?
It's really a struggle always for me. It's really difficult to say how it works, but one way of describing is that I do need to make people deconstruct what they are doing and then reconstruct it. And even if what they reconstruct is exactly the same thing that they had before they deconstructed it, they have more awareness of what it is. So, for example, there was a band I produced like 6-7 years ago where they didn't have any transitions between sections of the songs, and we worked on all the transitions in the rehearsal room. And then for the recording, we actually kind of dropped maybe half of the transitions and went back just to the A-B thing. But the way that they kind of those transitions felt at that point was completely different. Because not having a transition is a transition, but it's only a transition if you are aware that you haven't considered that there could be a transition. Know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's about awareness. So deconstruction. So you're looking at all the elements. You're kind of assigning meaning to things, and then you put the puzzle back together. Okay, it's like for example, like if you have a puzzle of New York City, okay, like 3,000 pieces, Okay, and you just look at it, that's New York City, but then you take all the pieces apart and you look at each one and say, okay, that's the top of Chrysler Building, that's blah blah blah, and then you put it back together. That's a real piece of art then, and that's how I produce. That's really how I produce. So the result could be exactly the same thing that goes in, but it's not going to be. It's not the same thing. It's completely charged up with meaning and emotion and intention is the word.
I would imagine there's a good sense of fulfillment for you as a producer, especially when you can bring that out in the art or the artist.
Yes, but I have to say it's really like maybe the most frustrating job I'm doing to produce, because like with some artists it's just so difficult to get them to really look at what they're doing and to re-evaluate what they're doing. Even something like as like there's a performance that isn't good, but it has to be that performance because I have to play the guitar part. No, it can't be the studio musician, it can't be the guy who can actually play guitar. It has to be me. And again, here's like a big difference. Usually I obviously encourage people to play stuff themselves, but if your vision as an artist goes beyond what you're capable of, I would rather collaborate with somebody to find the best realization of my vision, rather than trying to do everything myself. And I mean, there are people who are capable of doing that, but there are others who are not really capable. And so the struggle with the artist is usually to kind of get them to let go. And when I say let go, it's not to let go of an idea at all, but just to let go of an emotional attachment to any specific detail in the music.
There's a phrase in writing called "murder your darlings."
Mm-hmm. Never heard that before, but it makes sense. Yes.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I get to some of these Bernie questions?
Sure. The burning questions.
Yes. Let's see. I understand that some material you brought to the new Stickmen sessions had been written first for Crimson Project, but that was not released as Crimson Project. So can you tell us a little about what happened there?
Well, that's real insider information there. Actually, that piece, a particular piece, did not make it onto the Stickman record. So it's still out there. It's still in my computer, waiting to be played by 6 people, and it has to involve Adrian Belew, because I did something very cheeky. Being in the inner circle of King Crimson a little, I got to listen to material that has never been released. So there was something they played at a 2004 rehearsal, which was the year after the last incarnation of the band disbanded. And so there was one little riff that they played, this little piece, it was just really one riff. But they didn't take it anywhere, and it didn't come out, and they didn't like it, Pat told me. And I just felt inspired to write a piece around that little riff, and I did. And that was when the Crimson Project was active, and it was just the idea to have something that Adrian would like, because it was based on his riff. But I never presented it to him, he's never heard it. Pat and Tony have heard it and they loved it, but when we tried to massage it for the Stickman album, it turned out that Adrian's riff is it's defining the piece so much that we couldn't replace it. It just didn't work, and I just didn't want to waste a good piece,
Do it according to the vision, right?
Yes, exactly. So that's that.
Okay, I'll do one more here. Why do you feel that Face by Tuner and Falling for Ascension are 2 albums you won't release, even though you're very proud of them?
Um, I'm in a position where I dedicate my whole life to making music, and that means I'm also dedicating, well, not necessarily 24/7, but maybe 19/7 hours, yeah, to making music. And people call me like Markus, the guy who never sleeps or something, which isn't true. I do sleep, and but when you go to work, yeah, I make music. So I have like maybe somebody writes like 32 emails per day. Okay, but I can write 2 pieces per day, or I can record 5 hours of music each day. I don't do that at all because it doesn't make sense, which I'm going to explain now. But really, I just make music all the time. So there's just too much material, and I don't have enough support outside of my own self to really put out music. And even the Stickman record, even though we had an offer from the upcoming Stickman record, Prog Noir, we had an offer from a label which just Tony didn't like the deal at all, so we didn't do it, which means it ends up in my hands, in our hands, which means my hands, and I have to be the product manager, and I have to be the label and put it out, and it's just so frustrating. It really, I have kind of given in, and I do these things, but it means that Face, for example, which is probably, it's kind of funny to say, but I think like the best work I've done is not yet out there. Yeah, some of it is already completed, and obviously there's a lot more in here, but I've just come to the point where, like what I was saying before, like Steven Wilson says he wants people to hear his music, and I just say, no, if I'm not going to pay the price to put these things out just for like 5 people to hear it, because like even though if I said that I'm more about the quality, yes, but which means that it means that before I'm putting something out, I have to ask myself, do I want to invest the time? Do I invest myself into putting it out? I have to look at the quality of life I'm giving myself. So that's even before I consider the quality of the music or the quality of the interaction with a friend or fan. I have to say, okay, how well am I with that? Am I doing something good for myself? And at this point, it's just difficult to put out Face. There's not enough behind it to really put it out there. And with Falling for Ascension, I'm talking with Nick Berge, who is a friend of mine, and his label Ronin Rhythm Records, to put it out, but it seems like he's also not 100% convinced of the album. I don't know, so there's always something that kind of derails these projects.
That's great. Thank you for these very thoughtful and detailed answers. I really appreciate you going through all of this. I feel like there's at least another hour's conversation somewhere in here, but I have to get to a sales meeting in 20 minutes. So. Okay. But thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, Markus.
You're welcome.